Hello, welcome to the channel. I am the Walking Warrior, and today I've got something very special for you again. It's one of my favourite things. Yes, that's right, it's another big gun. And this gun is a little bit special because it's known as a dual purpose field gun. So that means this thing was used as an anti-aircraft gun and as an anti-tank gun. So this thing done both. So it probably was not as good as the dedicated anti-aircraft gun at taking down the planes. And it would not have been as good as the dedicated anti-tank gun at punching through the side of a tank. But because it done both, it meant you was in really good shape. No matter what came at you, you could go against it. So if you had planes attacking you one day, you could take some of them out with this. If the next day the tanks are rolling in, you can punch hole through them with this. So this did it all. So rather than needing two big guns, this thing done it all in one. That is why it is called the dual purpose. And it would be a really good thing to have this gun, because you could just, it was mobile, you could move it about, and it done it all, this gun. So the military loved this gun. The people that had this gun absolutely loved it because it done it all. So let's say hello to it. Hello, Howitzer. You was a legend of the Second World War, mate. Thanks for saving us in all them battles. So as this thing is like a dual purpose, it meant it was designed to be fired up in the air so it could take out the planes. And this thing did pack a punch with its shell, so this could knock anything out of the sky, from a little fighter to a big bomber. You hit it with this, it is coming down. And also, you drop the barrel down on this, it becomes a very effective anti-tank gun, because it is designed to fire along the ground at the tanks. Whereas most anti-aircraft guns of the day, alright, in an emergency you could lower that barrel and fire them at a tank. If it's all you had, of course you're going to do that. But it wasn't very good for the gun. The gun couldn't really cope with it. So this could. This was designed to deal with all that strain of firing low down at a tank. And also the other anti-tank guns of the day, you couldn't point them up in the air and take the planes out. But you could with this. That is why the crews who had these guns absolutely loved them, because they could go against anything with this. And he said that an effective crew, once people had used this gun for a little bit and got the proper hang of it, this thing was deadly. It was very accurate. There was a lot of different setups to this gun, so you could use it in so many different ways. So once you mastered this gun, you was a bit of a master on the battlefield. People loved having this howitzer because it was a very devastating thing to have on your side. So where this gun came into its own was its ability to be easily moved and put like anywhere. Because of that wheel on the floor, you could just lower that wheel, roll this thing onto it, set it up, and you was instantly firing. You could even fire this without that wheel down. But that like wheel underneath it gave it really lot of stability. And where the wheels run round on that metal ring on the outside of the wheel, it made this thing easy to turn, so you could do a 360 with this quite easy. Even if you was on rough ground, when you lower that metal wheel down, because it's got a nice flat metal base for the tyres to run round, this thing is easy to spin, so you can aim it anywhere and you can put it anywhere. And that base as well, when you lowered that down and put the gun on it, it made it really solid. So, like, all the recoil and all that was taken straight down through the ground. All the pressure went through that wheel into the ground. So it made this gun really stable and made it really accurate. And it was, like, quick to set up. You didn't have to build a concrete base. You didn't have to get it in place or get the old railway sleepers out, do a base for this. This thing carried its own base, and you just dropped that down and away you went. You could be up and running in no time and firing this thing. And they would come with a trailer, not with this one. You'd have a trailer with it that carried ammunition. So you'd hook this gun to the trailer with the ammunition in it and then hook that on the back of a wagon, and away you went. You tow this gun to wherever you want it. So it was really quick to move, easy to get into place, and fast to set up and get it going again. So that's what made this gun really good. It was its like ease of use. You could go anywhere with it, use it anywhere and get it firing quickly. Now its main use was with like infantry. They used this to like you knock out buildings and that. If you thought there was people hiding in a building over there somewhere, this was the gun to take that building out. That is what it was mainly used for. So it was used for other things. As an anti-aircraft gun, that would have been like if you had to use it. If you didn't have nothing else about, then you would have used this. But a dedicated anti-aircraft gun would have been a lot more effective than this thing. But if you had nothing else, of course you're going to use this. You're not just going to stand there and let planes drop stuff on you. You're going to use this mighty howitzer and go against them. So it was used for that, but mainly this thing was used for knocking out the buildings and supporting the ground troops. And also this was put into tanks. A couple of tanks was made with this. The first one was a Valentine, made by the British, which I think it went out to Africa and served out there. But it wasn't very good, and it wasn't the fault of the gun, it was the tank. It was unreliable and a bit of a nightmare and kept breaking down and going wrong. So it wasn't the gun's fault, it was a bad tank. But then later on the Canadians made a tank with it, and the Australians made a tank with it. The Canadian one, they made quite a lot of them, and it proved itself to be a good tank fighting along with the infantry. But the Australian one, they only made 14 of them, so I couldn't find out too much about it. But it did look like a big beast of a tank with this gun fitted to it. But it can't have been that brilliant if they only made 14 of them. So it wasn't the gun's fault with the first British tank, it was just a bad tank. So this howitzer, 25 pounder, it was in development in the 1930s. So by the start of the Second World War, this thing was ready to go. It was based on an earlier World War One gun called the 18 pounder, but they much improved on it, gave it a bigger barrel and sorted it right out so it could fire further, fire higher, be more stable and be more devastating in a battle. So the name, a howitzer, that sort of says the way it fires. So it's different from a field gun. Whereas a field gun, you'd point it at something you could see and it would fire its shell in a sort of straight line right at it, a direct hit. So you saw something, you pointed the field gun at it and shot it. But a howitzer fired different. It fired in an arc, so it was a bit like if you got a cricket ball or something and you threw it underarm, it would go right up in the air in a big arc and then land. That is what the howitzer did, whereas a field gun would be more like an overarm throw. You'd throw it and it would go directly in a straight line to its target. So that is the main difference between a field gun and a howitzer. So a howitzer was much more effective at going against enemies that you couldn't see. If they was hiding behind something, a howitzer could still get 'em. So there would be no hiding from this howitzer. If you thought you was all safe behind something, hiding, you wasn't, 'cause this howitzer would seek you out and could still hit you over the top of whatever you was hiding behind. So it was very effective against trenches and bunkers and things like that, 'cause this howitzer would just land a projectile right on top of them, taking them out. And you can always spot a howitzer gun because they have the short barrels, whereas the field guns have the big long barrel. So you can spot the difference once you get in to know a little bit. A howitzer will have a nice short little fat stocky barrel, and a field gun will have a big long barrel. So this howitzer, the barrel is rifled so it would spin the shell as it is firing, which makes it a lot more accurate. And the shells on these howitzers would be a two-part shell. So you'd have the projectile and then the cartridge with the explosives in to fire the shell. So you loaded it into the gun in two parts. So you could mix and match, 'cause it come with a variety of different things. This, you could get an armour-piercing shell. You could get a shell that was designed to detonate as soon as it hit the ground. You could get a shell that was designed to bury itself in the ground and take out the people that was dug in the bunkers underground. So there was so many different types of projectile that this fired. And the cartridge part had little bags in it. So depending on how far you wanted to fire one, you'd use it with the different bags. Now the cartridge come with like 3 bags in it. So if you fired it with the cartridge fully loaded with all the 3 bags left in there, it would fire a projectile 6.5 miles. So that's quite a long range weapon. But if you didn't want to fire it that far, you took one of the bags out and fired it with 2 bags in it. And then it would fire a projectile about 4.7 miles. So still quite a long range. But if that was too powerful, if you were shooting stuff that was a bit nearer to you, you'd take 2 bags out and fire it with just 1 bag in the cartridge. And that gave this gun a range of 2 miles. So 1 bag, 2 miles. 2 bags, 4.7 miles. 3 bags, 6.5 miles. But a little bit later on, they developed a cartridge called a supercharged one, which you couldn't change the bags in it or anything. It was just a sealed unit, and that could fire a projectile 8.3 miles. So that is a fairly long way, 8.3 miles. So there really was a lot to play around with this gun. That's why you wanted a crew that was really well trained in using all the different parts. Because you had the different types of shell, which was effective against different kinds of armament or bunkers and things like that. Then you had the bag system, so that was like your distance. And also you'd have the elevation of the gun and the angle and all that. So there was a lot to get your head round. But once you had a crew that had mastered this gun, it was very accurate. And a gun crew on this gun would have been 6 man. But these guns very rarely was operated on their own. You'd have groups of these together. And they relied on like intelligence or spotter planes. Because obviously if someone is hiding 8 miles away, you cannot see them. But a spotter plane might, or you'd have people like ahead of you finding out where the enemies were, and then they'd get that information back to you, give you a distance and where they was from your location, and then you'd set up a group of howitzers all aimed at that position and take them out. And also these guns would be used with like the infantry and the other stuff like that. They'd go ahead of you and these guns would be behind. So the infantry would keep relaying information back to these guns, and these guns would shoot over the top of them and like shoot sort of half a mile in front of them, kind of clearing the way for them to move. So the howitzers shot over the heads of the soldiers and the tanks and that, and like cleared the path for them to go in. So they was a very good tool to have on the battlefield, the howitzer. And they was a really good way of like clearing out people before your troops got there. Get in the howitzers and clear the way. And there is stories of in Italy, these guns were used clearing the way for the troops on the move, and they fired 54,000 shells in 2 weeks. That's quite impressive. That's a lot of shells. That's like 4,000 shells a day. You would not want to be on the receiving end of that lot. So if you're like me and you are a bit of a fan of these old guns and the old military stuff, you have to be a fan of the Howitzer, because it was the workhorse on the battlefield. It might not have been on the front line, but it was doing a hell of a lot of damage wherever it went. So this is a great gun. It's a true legend of war. And I've really enjoyed coming to see it today because I love these howitzers. They are a very special piece of British military history. So let's say goodbye to it. Bye bye, lovely big howitzer. You are now one of the stars on the Walking Warrior channel, and I wish I was taking you home, 'cause you'd look fantastic in my back garden beside the fish pond. Or even in the front garden. Then I could use you to feed the fish. I could get my aim in and fire the food over the house into the fish pond and feed the fish. Oh, that would be a great way to feed the fish. We'd both enjoy that. Hey, Mr. Howitzer. And you would be the greatest fish feeder the world has ever seen. So that's about it from me. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe so you can join me in the next one. I'm off now to see what else I can find. So let's go and explore.